A typical day of an average person living in the developed world consists of waking up in a totally free country, going to work with insurance and safety, and knowing that his salary will be a way to afford for everyday needs, medical healthcare, acquiring property. Completing some levels of mandatory and non-mandatory education, domestically or abroad, is also included in the everyday life of millions of students. However, none of us had ever imagined their life without all of the above rights. Even the most recent example, the COVID-19 pandemic, which gives a small representation of forbidding basic human rights, like access to work, school, transportation, and social life, has the goal of maintaining and preserving for humanity the most important human right given to everyone by mere existing, the right to life and health. So, what are the procedures that society went through in order to make all of these rights seem so obvious? In order to accomplish these rights, United Nations created the 9 human rights instruments and their monitoring bodies that provide protection to a large percentage of human needs. Introducing the United Nations Human Rights Instruments and Monitoring Bodies. International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. This instrument provides protection against the discrimination of a race, gender, religion, language, etc., giving everyone equally the same access to rights and the same protection by the law. The main value being protected by this instrument is that everyone is born free and equal to all human beings despite of any characteristics that might distinguish him of others. Main responsibility of this institution is not only the establishment of these rights but also to spread its influence throughout the whole world and set a barrier to all actions that are against these values. The monitoring body is the Committee of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights provides protection of all rights deriving from inherent dignity of humans by spreading the value of the right. Every human being must be equal in front of civil and political freedoms and have access to economic, social, and civil rights. Self-determination, political values, and status are some examples of the rights that are expected to be preserved from this instrument. Monitoring body is the Human Rights Committee. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women is responsible for giving women the necessary legal protection in areas that tend to conceal and diminish the existence and rights of women. Characteristic examples of such fields are the political, economic, cultural, or civil environment in which, for many years, the rights of women were treated in a fully different and degrading manner of that of men. This instrument analyzes all the measures that states need to take in order to change the legislation, the fields that underestimate the role of women, and at the same time prevent the occurrence of the opposite outcome, which is underestimation of rights of men, and finally to highlight the significant role of women in society and their contribution in its evolution. Monitoring body, the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women. Convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. The Convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment is responsible for providing the legal definition of torture and lists all the activities that fall within this definition, and ensure that all kinds of torture are included in the criminal law and are punished with no exception. This instrument has a duty to create a climate that motivates people to share their complaints regarding to the abuse of this right and create the appropriate mechanism to avoid such behaviors in the society. The monitoring body is the Committee Against Torture. Convention on the Rights of Child. This instrument has a duty to provide the appropriate legislation with the purpose of protecting the rights of children. Main responsibility of these rights is to create the appropriate environment for the rise up of children by preventing any kind of abuse, discrimination, degrading behavior, and by giving parents a legal duty to ensure for their children's safety, protection, and appropriate conditions for their well-being and growing up. Monitoring body is the Committee on the Rights of Child. International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and their Family Members. This instrument is responsible for giving the appropriate protection to migrant workers against illegal, degrading, or abusive action. It is necessary to ensure migrant workers that they will be treated in a country in a legal manner by preserving rights to freedom, insurance, safety, good working condition, equal rights and duties, and at the same need will be satisfied for the family members. Monitoring body, the Committee on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of their Families. International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. This instrument is the institution that protects people from the enforced disappearance and any action that aims to remove their liberty and the liberty of an individual. This consists a crime and shall be prohibited by the criminal law in every state, and actions must be taken in order to ensure the prevention and the punishment of this crime. Each person, victim of enforced disappearance, must have the right to be protected from the law and get treatment for any body of mental consequence. The monitoring body, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is a legal body that aims to ensure that every individual who suffers from diseases that fall in the category of disabilities must enjoy the same human rights and freedoms. Every person with disabilities must be protected against discrimination in economic, social, political areas and enjoy equal and specified to them access to education, health, etc. Monitoring body is a Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights has the legal responsibility to provide to every individual protection in various circumstances. For instance, access to education, protection before and after a childbirth, grow as good and safe working conditions, hygiene environment, healthcare system, access to natural wealth and resources. The Committee of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights is a monitoring body.
Thank you for the introduction, Alani. Now let's see two case studies about human rights. The first case study happened in Turkey, where the amount of violation against women were high. The legal problem is, can the United Nations Joint Programme to protect the human rights of women and girls and non-governmental organizations achieve a better life in Turkey for women? The basic situation in Turkey that they ratified most major international treaties concerning human rights, but on the contrary, several legal problems occurred like sexual harassment, safety problems, healthcare problems, and discriminations. The United Nations organizations and the local government started to negotiate, but there were no positive involvement, and the NGOs and women were not strong enough to reach female equality. So the UNGP decided a 5-year plan which involved education, safety improvements, and more efficient negotiation between leaders and women, and less default on human rights. The strategy was simple: direct involvement of women in process. They acquired agents and activists to help both sides to enforce the human rights and understand its purposes. By the time, thanks to skills taxes what they learned, women and NGOs had better position to reach their goals, and the local government enhanced its capacity to create proper circumstances for women, but there are still conflicts. And the solution? Stronger women organization appeared, better cooperation between parties, and less default on women's equality. Let's move to case study 2. The case study 2 consists of two parts. The first part is South Sudan. I would like to start with the situation by the United Nations. The people of South Sudan have been betrayed. After decades of war, peace appeared, but in 2016 the fights renewed due to political instability. Without peace, there were problems with poverty, safety, and healthcare sectors and other sectors. Because of the situation, Ban Ki-moon, who is Secretary General of United Nations, visited the country to solve the problems. The solution was they offered South Sudan to enter into People, Peace, Prosperity, launched by World Bank, to repair problems, but it's still in progress to fully correct every aspect of their problems. The second part of case study 2 is Libya, where the problems are violations, abuse, and chaos. After 2011, the death of Gaddafi, the political background was unstable, and war crimes and denial of freedom appeared. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights made all about a report to International Crime Court to ask more assets to investigate and prosecute the criminals. The assigned organizations of United Nations found several people who were responsible for crimes, but it's under investigation. This is now the conclusion of case study 2. And now, let's see the summary. We learned about human rights in our everyday life, and the monitoring bodies have to control the process. The way how can NGOs, civils, and organizations work to reach their goals. Sadly, there are and there will always be atrocities, but people and the organization have to work on it to reduce it to zero. And at the end, I brought a situation from a woman who was a member in Turkey during the 5-year plan. For me, what matters most is working together with the municipality. Before I used to be apprehensive, worrying about whether I would be blamed for bringing up issues that were not worthy of consideration. Now I'm confident. I know that dialogue and lobbying are part of my quest for my rights. And this is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your attention and that you listened us. Thank you.